Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Gursant Singh, and today I will be discussing a webinar that I participated in yesterday. It was hosted by the heads of 3HO, and this is in response to these allegations that have come forward about Yogi Bhajan abusing his students sexually and physically. Now, in this webinar that I participated in yesterday, there was about 45 people attending, and the CEO of 3HO, this Pritpal Kaur Khalsa, who I've known for some 40 years or so, stated that 3HO will be continuing to teach the Kundalini Yoga of Yogi Bhajan no matter what happens in this investigation. Now, I think this is an important point that everybody should realize, that essentially what Pritpal Kaur, who is obviously in a position of power there in 3HO, is saying, is that what 3HO is going to try to do is separate the teachings of Yogi Bhajan from the behavior of Yogi Bhajan. Now, personally, I think this is an impossible task, because all of the teachings are so intertwined with what Yogi Bhajan was as a person. Yogi Bhajan taught an entire lifestyle, and what he taught was him, essentially. There's all kinds of phrases I've seen, like, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And, Yogi Bhajan always taught, follow my teachings and not, what the way I am, this type of thing. But this is essentially impossible. And I will show you why in this video. There are many scholarly people who have studied Kundalini Yoga and have studied Yogi Bhajan, along with many former disciples and students who agree with me that you cannot separate Yogi Bhajan from his teachings. They're one and the same, essentially. All right, so let's go through some of these reasons that I've put together, and then I will also show for you at the end of this video the entire webinar, so you can get a sense for how these leaders and heads of 3HO are responding to these accounts and allegations of sexual abuse and physical abuse by Yogi Bhajan. Now, for all of you who don't know who I am, again, my name is Gursant Singh, and I spent some 30 years with Yogi Bhajan from the late 1970s until his death in 2004. This picture here that you're looking at is from the 1980s, and I'm there in the picture with the blue arrow above my head there. Now, it is interesting to note here in this picture how Yogi Bhajan is with all the women and the men on the other side. Us husbands had to literally compete for the affections of our wives. Yogi Bhajan was a sexual predator, and this is all coming out now, but it's just kind of interesting in this photo how this is really apparent. All right, so here's other evidence of how I active participant in 3HO and spent a lot of time with Yogi Bhajan, so I have some knowledge and experience with Yogi Bhajan as a person, and I practice his Kundalini yoga for some 30 years as well. This was an issue that I campaigned for, where I tried to get in the US Army as a Sikh back in 1982, and it was written up in the LA Times. I eventually wrote a book, Confessions of an American Sikh, which was published in 2012. And I talk about a lot of these observations on how Yogi Bhajan was a sexual predator, how he was lying about the history of his Kundalini yoga, and lying about the history of Sikh faith, how he made up stories to fit his Tantric Kundalini yoga agenda. And I talk about a lot of this in my book, Confessions of an American Sikh, which is available on Amazon. And here are more of the protests there. This was in 1982 when I tried to get in the US Army. And so, as I said, I have a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge concerning 3HO, how they operate, and how Yogi Bhajan defrauded people financially, emotionally, and again, lied about a lot of these techniques, you might say, Kundalini yoga, and he put them out there as being ancient secrets when, in fact, he copied and pasted them from several well-known yogis and then added his elements, which I think are really aimed at getting people into his cult, for cult control. And so when this person here, this is this Pritpal Kaur, and she's the CEO of 3HO, when she says that they are going to continue the teachings of Yogi Bhajan's, the kriyas and the mantras and everything, no matter what happens with this investigation. This is very disturbing to me, and I'm sure that it's very disturbing to a lot of people out there who see Yogi Bhajan as a real fraud, how he damaged the image of Sikhs, how he manipulated people and lied to them. He took them for a ride, basically, and used them to gain power, money, and sex for himself. So I am angry about this, if you will, and that's why I've been working to expose Yogi Bhajan and his false teachings and the damage that they do. For like almost 10 years now, I've been talking about this. So you can see here how this Pritpal Kaur is even disrespecting the Sikh faith by having her back to what appears to be the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji in the Sikh Gurdwara there in Espanola. And this was a screenshot taken from a video she did teaching some Yogi Bhajan Kriya in front of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib with her back to the Sri Guru Granth Sahib. This was 4 or 5 years ago at least when she did this. And she's never acknowledged that this is a total disrespect of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib. This is just typical of how the Yogi Bhajan followers have taken up this mantle of Yogi Bhajan and perpetuate these lies and frauds of Yogi Bhajan. Now, I want to direct all of you to listen to these videos and read the academic study that this Philip Dislepp has done. There's 2 videos now that are out, and I'll put links to them both. Philip Dislepp is an academic, and he's in the doctorate program at the University of Santa Barbara, evidently. And so he wrote this book, or not book, but a academic study in 2012, Maharaj Deban Tantric. And he's done an excellent job of interviewing many people who knew Yogi Bhajan, past students of Yogi Bhajan, people who came in contact with Yogi Bhajan in the early years, in the early, late 60s and early 70s especially. And he interviewed many former students and current students of Yogi Bhajan to get an idea of the true history behind Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini Yoga, Tantric Yoga. Now, what Philip Dislepp found, in a nutshell, was that Yogi Bhajan flat out lied about a lot of this history. And he made up a false correlation and alignment with the Sikh religion, saying that the Sikh gurus practiced Kundalini Yoga, and that the Sikh gurus revealed to Yogi Bhajan in secret that this Kundalini Yoga, these Kriyas in Kundalini Yoga of Yogi Bhajan's, Philip Dislepp really shows that this is a complete lie and fabrication by Yogi Bhajan. And so these are very good videos. Like I said, I will put a link to these videos and a link to Philip's book or manuscript, this Maharaj Deban Tantric, there as well. Now, a couple of points that I want to make that Philip makes in his videos are that Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini Yoga is very mechanical. And I was really relating to this because as I did Kundalini Yoga for 30 years, I practiced many of the Kriyas and practiced them religiously. Try to follow Yogi Bhajan's teachings in the hopes that I would gain what was promised from Yogi Bhajan: health, wealth. I even did this yoga kriya that Yogi Bhajan prescribed for seeing auras. And I did it for at least 20 years, every single day. And Yogi Bhajan says that after doing this kriya, you would be able to see auras. Well, I never was able to see auras. And it really seemed to me that Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini Yoga was just an infinite mechanical ritual that always made you feel like you could never succeed in becoming either enlightened or getting these particular things like health or wealth or power or whatever. It was just unachievable because either maybe you thought you didn't do the kriya quite right, or you didn't do it with the right motivation or whatever. But I found after starting to follow the Sikh faith in 2009 or so, when I started to understand that Yogi Bhajan had led us astray, how the Sikh faith teaches that we should recite Gurbani, that we should have devotion and love for God, only because that is an end, to do these things out of love for God and respect for God, not that we are doing things to gain power, to gain wealth or health or all these things. All of these things come through the grace of God, through the grace of Waheguru. And Yogi Bhajan was teaching that we could achieve these things through these man-made yoga exercises. So when Pritpal Kaur, in this video you'll see after I finish here, says that one can achieve these goods, these that she says basically the Kundalini works, and that it has achieved all the health you want and all these different things you want. I really think that they are under some kind of delusion that Yogi Bhajan created just in order to get them into his cult. I think that Yogi Bhajan's mantras, endless thousands of different mantras that he made up, that these are nothing more than a way to induct people into his cult. Yogi Bhajan would have us do these mantras and high breathifier for hours on end. And any of you who know about how the brain works, if you do heavy exercises, you're going to get these endorphins and other chemicals in your brain that will make you feel this feeling of well-being. Well, you can get the same thing by running, all that. But Yogi Bhajan would have us lay out and get us into a trance after we'd done this heavy exercise, and really overstimulating the parasympathetic nervous system, and just really getting us what people would call a high. And so when people get laid out and they do these exercises, and then he would do this really low tone talking using this neuro-linguistic programming, which I studied and am certified in the 1980s. He would put us into a trance. And I think essentially a lot of these hardcore followers like this Pritpal Kaur and many of the others who are supportive of Yogi Bhajan and his teachings are still in this trance. It is a very powerful technique that Yogi Bhajan used, this neuro-linguistic programming, to literally hypnotize people. So this Philip Deslep, in his book, or in his academic study and in these videos, talks extensively about how Yogi Bhajan made up a lot of these teachings and then copied and pasted some of these other teachings and put together this system, which he says, and I also agree with, is a very mechanical type of spiritual practice that is directed at well, he doesn't say this exactly, but I believe that to get people into his cult. Now, I also have observed that these people like Pritpal Kaur, who say that Yogi Bhajan's teachings should be preserved, they have no awareness of how Yogi Bhajan really was and his teachings. They weren't around Yogi Bhajan that much. And I don't think they really saw how integrated Yogi Bhajan's character was with his teachings. You get a real sense of, if you've read Pamela Dyson's new book, Premka, how Yogi Bhajan set the stage for these many abuses in his teachings. He set his students so that they would be prepared to accept abuse from Yogi Bhajan and think of it as something that spiritual teachers do, that they abuse their students. You get a sense of this when Yogi Bhajan tells the stories about how his supposed teacher, this Sant Hazara Singh, told him to go up to the top of a tree and sit there for 3 days, and then, or sit there until he came back, and he didn't come back for 3 days. So Yogi Bhajan was up there starving, supposedly, and then this Hazara Singh came back after 3 days. So this sets the stage for Yogi Bhajan abusing his students. And this is all integrated into Yogi Bhajan's teachings, that one should be completely loyal, without question, to their teacher, to Yogi Bhajan. So this is something that Philip Deslep talks about in his videos and in his academic study. Now, the other point I'd like to bring up is that Yogi Bhajan always called this Kundalini yoga of his the yoga of awareness. And my point is that if people like Pritpal Kaur and these other hardcore Yogi Bhajan followers have been practicing this yoga of awareness of Yogi Bhajan's for some 40 or 45 years, then why weren't they aware of Yogi Bhajan being a sexual predator, and if they were practicing this Kundalini yoga, if it was the yoga of awareness? So it just doesn't make sense. I have never seen anybody that has been practicing Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini yoga for this amount of time, anyone who's liberated or a saint. Philip Deslep talks about this in his videos. Where are they? Yogi Bhajan said you'd be liberated after 40 days if you practice his Kundalini yoga. Is it that they're not practicing it perfectly or something? So that brings up the fact that, you know, you're just set up for defeat, or just set up for failure in Yogi Bhajan's system, because you're maybe not doing it quite correctly or something. I think this is all just a fabrication by Yogi Bhajan to make people continually paying to get more instruction, paying the teacher trainers to get more instruction on the Kundalini yoga so that they're doing it more correctly, or more so they can achieve this liberation or whatever. This Pritpal Kaur, she gets paid a pretty hefty salary by 3HO. I looked up the nonprofit reports that are all public, and I believe she gets paid something like 60,000, if I recall, a year, 65,000. It might be more. I know that this Gurmustic from SeekNet, which all of these organizations are all tied together, the Yogi Bhajan organizations like SeekNet and 3HO. He gets paid about 90,000 a year. This Gursant Singh gets paid something like 60, 65,000. The head of KRI, Kundalini Research Institute, he's paid about, I think it's 80 or 90,000 a year, maybe 100. I don't remember exactly. Nirvana Singh is his name. So obviously they have a vested interest in continuing to teach this Kundalini yoga and keep everybody on the hook. So you can never really achieve this liberation or, master Kundalini Yoga without taking the next course. They have teacher trainings that go through 1 to infinity, essentially, and they are not cheap. I've had people write me that said they've spent tens of thousands of dollars on these teacher trainings. And they also have to attend this tantric yoga that Yogi Bhajan taught and pay for that. So the whole thing is a big money-making thing. Yogi Bhajan's 3HO gives out these spiritual names, which they strongly suggest a donation of $40 and at least $40 or more that you contribute to get these spiritual names. I have a person who is in the inside there in 3HO has told me that they make thousands of dollars a month from these spiritual names, getting these spiritual names, which is an appropriation of the Sikh religion. And people don't know what it means to hold a name, Singh or Kaur, which is part of being a Sikh. So these are things that are very disturbing. So Philip Dislep, I mentioned this Sadhuzara Singh, which was Yogi Bhajan's supposed teacher, has brought up very good points about how if Sadhuzara Singh really existed, why aren't there more references to him? Why aren't other students of his listed or available? There's just no other history except from the mouth of Yogi Bhajan about his Kundalini Yoga. And this issue about Yogi Bhajan appropriating the Sikh religion and falsely claiming that the Sikh gurus taught Kundalini Yoga is very well researched by Philip Dislep in his articles and YouTube videos. There is just no history of the Sikh gurus ever practicing Kundalini Yoga or Tantric Yoga, which Yogi Bhajan claims. You just think about it logically. There was so much history that was written down and recorded about what the Sikh gurus did. The Sikh religion is quite a new religion, only about 500 years old. A lot of the Sikh gurus lived less or a little bit more than 300 years ago. And so a lot of the history, almost all of the history is completely recorded. They even have, artifacts about what the Sikh gurus wore, the weapons they used, all of these things. And if there was any shred of evidence that the Sikh gurus ever practiced Kundalini Yoga, I assure you it would be there. But there is just none. Getting back to our point about why 3HO and the Yogi Bhajan followers just need to completely drop these teachings of Yogi Bhajan. There is just ample evidence that the Kundalini Yoga and Tantric Yoga of Yogi Bhajan is doing a lot of damage. Let me just look at my notes here real quick. So, again, here is the history of Yogi Bhajan and 3HO. This is the front cover of the Maharaj Mantantric. It was written by Philip Dislep. I recommend you all read this and listen to the videos. This will give you a really good overview about why Yogi Bhajan's teachings, along with his images, need to be completely dismantled and not followed. Now, this is another very good article. American Yogis Distort Sikh Scriptures. Bhajan's yogic theories form framework of English translation of Sri Guru Granth Sahib. This was an article that was written in 2015 and published in the Sikh Free Press. I highly recommend that you all read this article. It goes in depth about how Yogi Bhajan abused and misused Gurbani and the Sikh scriptures for his own use, and this gave him credibility, gave his Kundalini Yoga and Tantric Yoga credibility by attaching it falsely to the Sikh religion. I can't tell you how upset this made me when I realized that Yogi Bhajan was lying to us about how Sikhs practice. It was just a real upsetting and eye-opening experience for me that when I read this book by Dr. Trilochan Singh, Sikhism and Tantric Yoga. This is a screenshot of the front of the book, and you can download this book at my website, gurmukhyoga.com. I'll put a link again to it in the description to this video. Sikhism and Tantric Yoga, critical evaluation of Yogi Bhajan's Tantric Yoga in the light of Sikh mystical experiences and doctrines, by Dr. Trilochan Singh. So I recommend you all read this book. I think that after you read these articles and you listen to these videos, you'll see that Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini Yoga and Tantric Yoga are very damaging. They've led a lot of people astray. I've read many posts by some of these second generation Yogi Bhajan disciples, as they're called, who are cutting their hair and taking off their turbans, all because they do not want to practice what Yogi Bhajan taught. They're so angry with the accounts that have been coming up about their fellow school associates and friends that have been abused both sexually and physically by Yogi Bhajan. So even though many traditional Sikhs say that Yogi Bhajan, he brought a lot of people into Sikhi, it doesn't matter that he lied. I would say that it does matter that he lied, because look at how this now is just causing tremendous damage. I would have personally liked to have seen what Sikhi would have done without Yogi Bhajan. He twisted the Sikh religion to fit his Tantric and Kundalini Yoga, lied about the Sikh history, and made up a lot of these kriyas in order to get him this control over his students. That's what I feel he did, to gain power and money and sex just for himself. And these articles and videos will really give you insight into just how much damage Yogi Bhajan has done. And by continuing these practices of Yogi Bhajan, these kriyas and these mantras, these 3HO people, wittingly or unwittingly, are going to perpetuate this lie, this fraud of Yogi Bhajan, and continue the damage, the extreme pain that Yogi Bhajan has caused his students. Now, here's another good post or article that I believe is definitely worth reading. And I'll try to go through this slowly so that you can stop this video and read it for yourself. But this Tej Steiner was a Mukhiya Singh Sahib, if you will, former disciple of Yogi Bhajan who left in the 1980s. And he was the head of the Toronto ashram. He has been speaking out now about the many abuses of Yogi Bhajan and the lies and frauds of Yogi Bhajan. And he brings up this very question. He says, is it possible to separate Yogi Bhajan from his Kundalini Yoga teachings? And then by extension, is it possible to separate Yogi Bhajan from the organizations he created to pass on his teachings? And so this is exactly what Pritpal Kaur and these other 3HO people are talking about, how they want to just separate Yogi Bhajan from the teachings and keep the teachings. And I, with along like people like Tej Steiner, say it's impossible to do that. You just got to dump it, get rid of it all, dismantle the whole thing. And so Tej Steiner says, a clear answer came to me. Of course, it's not possible to separate them. They are one and the same. And then he goes on to say, but why is this? I can't tell you how many times I've heard people who stayed in 3HO, knowing much of what is becoming public now, agree with Yogi Bhajan in his saying, I'm only a humble messenger. I may be a scoundrel, but it's my duty to deliver these teachings to you. This is a myth that he created to cover his corruption. It's a clever myth. Why is it a myth? Here are a few of the pieces of the puzzle that fell into place for me Saturday night. See if they make sense to you. It starts with this basic premise. Kundalini Yoga is taught by Yogi Bhajan and almost entirely based on overstimulating the sympathetic nervous system. All of the breath of fire, all of these yoga poses, held for sometimes hours at a time, his yelled admonishments to keep up, and you'll keep up. Don't give an inch. Fake it until you make it. All of these things. The poke and provoke Saturn teacher persona. The pretentious titles. All of these are designed to stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. He was getting us high. This is what Tej Steiner says. Folks, he was not getting us into our hearts. He was taking us out of our bodies and out of our personal sense of self. It's a power-based lifestyle and practice, one of control by the teachers, by Yogi Bhajan. And I've had people write me who say that because of this coronavirus lockdown, they haven't gone to the Kundalini Yoga teacher trainings and the classes, that they've experienced a lot more creativity by not practicing the Kundalini Yoga. So maybe this is really a good thing in a way that people are not able to go to these classes, the Kundalini Yoga classes, because now they're experiencing the difference and they're not experiencing this heavy hammering and smashing of these Yogi Bhajan kriyas and yogas on their psyche. And I definitely can attest that the Yogi Bhajan way of smashing these Kundalini Yoga kriyas together, and then along with maybe some heavy gong meditations and things like that, is definitely just really jarring on your psyche, and I think suppresses creativity. It puts you under the control of this Yogi Bhajan psyche, if you will, this trance-like state that is carried on by people like this Pritpal Kaur and these other hardcore Yogi Bhajan followers that have developed this entire lifestyle to do nothing but promote this heavy-handed, smashing practice. So Tej goes on to say, talks about how we want to get into our hearts more and to experience trust. You can read all of the entire things that he says here, which is, I think, is really, really good. He says here, there's nothing masterful about this. Mastery comes only with balance. The organizations he set up to continue his legacy have, in fact, continued his legacy. They have continued to dominate and manipulate the students they attract, often unknowingly. This, for me, explains a great deal about 3HO and Sikh Dharma as they exist today. Here are just a few examples seen through my personal lens. He, Yogi Bhajan, set up schools for our children and staffed them with sadistic, misogynistic teachers. They were profit centers for his business empire. He knew so-and-so, I crossed out the name just to protect them, was a pedophile. He knew Nanak Dev Singh. Nanak Dev Singh was a teacher at this school there in India. He's passed away now, so it's okay to put his name there. Was an out-of-control masochist. He knew the founder of the school in New Mexico had no business being near children, let alone being responsible for their care and education. He also knew that separating children from their parents would increase his control over both. Those schools continue today. The victims from the past who attended them have not been recognized, nor have they received any kind of reparation. The Zoom call Saturday morning was a step in the right direction, but it is organizational damage control, or it will lead to those schools being shut down and the horror stories of the children being made public. Did you ever wonder why love was not ground zero and foundational for everything that Yogi Bhajan taught? This is because love wasn't foundational for him. I think this is very important. Yogi Bhajan's entire practice, his entire teaching, method, all of his teachings were not based on love. They were based on this heavy-handed smashing and abuse. And this all comes out now in his actual character as a human being and his actions of being a sexual predator. I have drawings of his which clearly show how he reveres these phallic images. They're just disgusting. And it's all about power for him. When one of these phallic images that I published on the internet before, and you can see them, I can put a link to them. He's got a woman in the middle of this phallic image, is a penis essentially. And then he's got written on the side power, and then love above it in this really disgusting image that shouldn't even be part of any kind of spiritual teacher's profile. So Tej says here, he couldn't receive all the love that we freely gave him. He had no peers, no real friends, no community other than the one he controlled. Today, I still don't sense that love is central to Kundalini Yoga teachers' training. It's mostly inhale, exhale, hold breath kinds of directing. And if you watch this video after I finish speaking, you'll see and hear the mechanical way that Pritpal Kaur and these other Yogi Bhajan 3HO heads present their case, if you will, or how they're going to proceed with these this investigation. It's very mechanical. It has no heart to it. It has no love to it. Today, I still don't see this sense that love is essential to Kundalini Yoga teachers training. It's mostly inhale, exhale, hold your breath kinds of directing. Many of the first generation Kundalini Yoga teachers that I know taught through the personal being teachers. I'm not familiar with the second and third generation of teachers. They were often caught in role playing, something scripted. Many of them took on the main mannerisms and even the accent of Yogi Bhajan. This is so true. We all wanted to try to emulate Yogi Bhajan. And by practicing his teachings, everybody wants to emulate Yogi Bhajan. And that is the agenda that will be left if Yogi Bhajan's teachings are not dismantled completely. If you're doing his teachings, you will emulate him. What person would ever think that Yogi Bhajan would set down teachings that wouldn't emulate himself? Every bit of his teachings strive to emulate himself, to worship Yogi Bhajan. They've created images of Yogi Bhajan, these statues and murtis, idols of Yogi Bhajan down there in Espanola. They put Yogi Bhajan's images and pictures in the Gurdwara. All of these people want nothing more than to emulate Yogi Bhajan. And by doing a smokescreen effect, by just maybe getting rid of some of the pictures and keeping the teachings, then you keep this secret hidden agenda of emulating Yogi Bhajan. And by his teachings, you are secretly trying to make people into Yogi Bhajan's image. So Tej goes on to say, many of them took on the mannerisms and even the accent of Yogi Bhajan. Many taught through mimicry rather than their own personal embodiment of the yoga. They taught from a position of knowing something their students didn't know rather than reminding their students of what everyone innately knows. Some of them had their students massage their feet and serve them tea. Again, mimicry. I think this is really so true. Again, these people like Pritpal Kaur have a vested interest in continuing these trance-inducing, these inducting into cult practices of Yogi Bhajan. Most of Yogi Bhajan's top lieutenants were not honorable men. They were not kind. They lied. Several were criminals. So true. I've talked about this in many of my other videos. How I worked with this, both of these Hari Jivans. One is the chief of protocol, and the other one is known as the toner bandit. And I had the unfortunate experience of working with both of them closely. And one was charged in a field of schemes by the Federal Trade Commission eventually, this Hari Jivan, who was the chief of protocol, and the other was criminally indicted on fraud and tax evasion. This Hari Jivan Jr., as we used to call him, or the toner bandit. So I know what I'm talking about when I can definitely testify that there were a lot of criminals in 3HO, and Yogi Bhajan sanctioned these criminal activities. He would come to the boiler room, telemarketing boiler room where we would work, and tell us, there's no karma on the phone, don't worry about what you say. And so we would go out and misrepresent ourselves and imply that we were people's normal suppliers and that this was just their normal order that they were sending out in order to get money to support Yogi Bhajan's lavish lifestyle. I know for a fact that a lot of this money that came in from the boiler toner rooms went up to pay for Yogi Bhajan's lavish thousands of dollars lunches in Beverly Hills. And then the millions of dollars that Yogi Bhajan bought in jewelry there at Jerry's there in Beverly Hills. I was on security duty a lot of the time, so I witnessed how Yogi Bhajan would go there and spend millions of dollars. Every day we'd go to lunch at La Scala and all of these very fancy restaurants there in Beverly Hills, and spend all this money that was fraudulently obtained from really innocent nonprofit businesses and schools that we would bilk out of thousands, if not millions of dollars in these telemarketing scam operations. I'm really ashamed that I participated in all this. I guess the only defense I have is that I was very young, and I was doing this on the orders of a person who I thought was my spiritual teacher, this Yogi Bhajan. And you can all see why I am very angry that I was misled by Yogi Bhajan. It's just really beyond the pale what Yogi Bhajan did. And I do not want to see Yogi Bhajan's teachings continue so that we can make these mini Yogi Bhajans out there and continue this indoctrination into his cult of personality. That's what it will be. And if they just take down pictures, that's not enough. If you keep all these teachings, you'll have all these little mini Yogi Bhajans, and all but name is what it amounts to. So Tej goes on to say here, most of Yogi Bhajan's top lieutenants were not honorable men. They were not kind. They lied. Several were criminals. They believed that the end justifies the means and lived into that mean belief. Hari Jivan Singh in LA, Guru Jot Singh in DC, others in between. It had a mafia smell to it. And I have to say, this is a very good analogy about Yogi Bhajan's organizations being like a mafia, and Yogi Bhajan being the kingpin godfather, if you will. Yogi Bhajan controlled everything. And now you have the situation where you have his hardcore followers who are trying to keep that power. And we, as people who are interested in the truth, are interested in love and promoting the truth, we need to stop this continuation of Yogi Bhajan's false teachings and fraudulent and damaging teachings, for that matter, too. Yogi Bhajan had a long history of misogyny. He violently raped several of his young students. He was publicly abusive to his wife. Women were his servants. He called them prostitutes and whores when they left. Guru Fateh Singh in Toronto still proclaims today that Premka is lying and that she wrote her book to make money. Hari Jivan Singh uses his official organizational title to slander Premka as well. No one in 3HO or Sikh Dharma has demanded that they stop. Just trying to find my place here. The current leadership knew nothing that Premka writes about her book. They could have written their own books, yet there was only cover-up and denial until her book made their denial look a little silly. Yogi Bhajan created an organizational culture that was sexually repressed, shaming, male-dominated, pleasure avoidant, homophobic, and gender-constricted in some ways. It is as non-inclusive as the Catholic Church. He set the tone for all of this. Much of it continues today. Did you ever wonder where the enlightened ones were in 3HO? The ones who spent 40 to 50 years practicing Yogi Bhajan's teachings and became masters themselves. From my perspective, when spiritual teachings are as prescriptive as his Kundalini Yoga teachings, in which students are given an endless list of things to do to become enlightened, those students will just end up still not finding what they're looking for. And this is exactly what I was talking about. In the Sikh faith, we practice to do devotional worship of God and not to do things just out of prescriptive ritual. like to do a mantra to gain wealth or health or power or whatever. And so this is exactly what Tej is speaking about here. Our Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini Yoga and Tantric Yoga were prescriptive, and they were man-made, and you could never really accomplish this goal of being enlightened, because enlightenment only comes from grace of God. It doesn't come from your own efforts. That is the reality. And Yogi Bhajan tried to get people into his sphere of influence, into a trance, so that he could control them for power, money, and sex. That's all he was interested in. He was not interested in creating liberated people or trying to get people liberated. He wanted to keep them in his cult, in his sphere of influence. So Tej goes on to say, from my perspective, when spiritual teachings are as prescriptive as Kundalini Yoga teachings, in which students are given an endless list of things to do to become enlightened, those students will just end up still not finding what they're looking for. Kundalini Yoga today continues to be almost 100% prescriptive. It's a yoga of endless doing, where light is available in high bursts, but cannot be sustained in daily life. This is so true. I don't remember Yogi Bhajan ever encouraging silent meditation, doing nothing. It was all had, hari, and its thousands of cousin mantras. I love mantra, but mantra doesn't lead to silence. It's hypnosis, and this is what I was talking about. Yogi Bhajan, I believe, used this neuro-linguistic programming, which he studied and researched. I got certified in it from the original founders, this Grinder and Bandler in 1980. And then Yogi Bhajan learned about it from several other people that were also certified, that were in 3HO. This Gursant Singh and this Viriam Singh was also part of this Siri Singh Saab Corporation board of directors. And then he told people to not learn it anymore, because I think he wanted to be able to use this himself. Yogi Bhajan wanted to use this himself to control people, because it's very manipulative and he uses a lot of techniques that are hypnosis based, where you can put people into a trance and get them and control them. So Yogi Bhajan was really an expert at this. He was a very, very manipulative person. This really comes out in all of his teachings. I think you just listen to his lecture, how he's very controlling and commanding. So Tej goes on to say, but mantra that doesn't lead to silence is hypnosis. I also love Sanatana Kaur's music, and I have seen how the purity of her sweet voice can hypnotically take a room full of people out of their bodies without being aware of it. Yogi Bhajan taught her how to do this. So all of these Yogi Bhajan followers are emulating Yogi Bhajan, putting people into a trance, inducting them into the cult. I've been talking about this for years, and Tej really, I think, sums this up and does a good job of discussing this and bringing this out. Yogi Bhajan taught her how to do this. He was a master at it. There are many wonderful Kundalini Yoga teachers and devoted Sikhs within 3HO. While they have often called whistleblowing slander, they have also lived into selfless service, devotion, and kindness. They are the devoted ones. I bow to them, and I truly have compassion for them as they sort out Yogi Bhajan's betrayal, as many of us have had to do when it was our turn to face the dark shadow of our teacher. Okay, so I think this really sums up how there's this real crisis facing the 3HO group and the people there. But I believe that a lot of these people, like Pritpal Kaur, will never change. And sad to say, but I think that we need to either get them out of those offices by elections, somehow getting more people involved in the 3HO elections and getting them voted out, and just getting rid of all these teachings of Yogi Bhajan, or protesting to the point where the income flow just goes to zero and the organizations just have to disband. But there has to be some way to get these leaders out of there, because they're not going to change. So this is the final end of that post that this Tej Singh, or Tej Steiner, he used to be known as Gursant Singh Khalsa from Toronto, post there. So I've talked for quite a long time here, and I want to emphasize how there needs to be a complete dismantling of Yogi Bhajan's teachings, and people need to understand that his teachings are much more damaging than do any good. I think I've gone into great detail rebutting Pritpal Kaur's argument that Kundalini Yoga works, or that it gives health, or whatever you're looking for. Has done a lot of good. I think it's done a lot of damage, and much more damage than any good. It just needs to be completely, like I said, dismantled and put in the rubbish bin. So now please watch the rest of this video, where I'll be showing the 3HO webinar that I participated in yesterday, and I will mention that they never acknowledged my presence in the webinar. They did talk in a roundabout way about my question, which was how they were going to deal with the financial, emotional, and mental abuse of Yogi Bhajan. They actually never addressed that. They did talk a little bit about how they were not going to get rid of the teachings of Yogi Bhajan, because that was my question about what they were going to do about Yogi Bhajan's lies and frauds. So they have more of these webinars, and I will be continuing to try to confront them with these difficult questions about how they're going to deal with Yogi Bhajan's lies and frauds and appropriation of the Sikh faith. I suspect that they'll probably block me at some point, like they have done for the last 10 years. But this just shows how it's really a cult of personality around YB, and I don't think that's ever going to change unless these leaders are completely dismissed from their posts, or completely driven from their posts of power in 3HO. It's either that, or 3HO, like I said, is completely dissolved because they run out of money and nobody's supporting them with either donations or with support, taking Kundalini Yoga classes and supporting their Yogi Tea, which is just essentially a big fundraiser for their Yogi Bhajan cult. Thank you for your time. And like I said, there's more to this video if you watch the webinar. I've recorded the entire thing and put it at the end of this video. And then also I put screenshots of the article I talked about, the American Sikhs Distort Sikh Sikh scriptures. American yogis distort Sikh scriptures at the very end of the video. And then I will post a lot of these links to Philip Dislep's videos and his article, Maharaj the Mantantric, and then the link to Dr. Trilochan Singh's book, Sikhism and Tantric Yoga, and the description to this YouTube video. Thank you for your time. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
And I do want to say there is something in the chat that I would love to respond to, and it's about Yogi Bhajan, his teachings, and the amazing gift he has brought to the world in these teachings and this technology. And there is no intention of in any way changing that or not continuing to offer that technology and those teachings to the world. We're in this world right now. The world needs this powerful technology for so many reasons, which I really don't have to even stay here because I know it's what's really keeping all of us in our space of being able to ride through these times with ease and with clarity.
This looks like it's a question. Will Yogi Bhajan for 3HO, but will Yogi Bhajan's picture be removed from the summer solstice event? Is it still okay to use it? Does 3HO have an official position on this? So I would just say at this point, the investigation is not complete and no report has been issued. And so this question kind of assumes a conclusion has already been reached, which it hasn't. So I don't know if Pritpal Kaur, you want to comment on what you're planning to do?
Yes, there is no official position on that. It really is an individual, a center, your choice. And it's, we will be doing Kriyas and tuning in and featuring all of Yogi Bhajan's teachings in the way we always have. We will be featuring his teachings at the event.
Practice and promising they would have a particular outcome. It's something that's curious to me because it's one of the things that drew me to Kundalini a couple of years ago. Was, I'd done other lineages of yoga for many years, and none of them had ever promised you would, if you do this for 60, 90 days, 120 days. And I'll be honest, I bought into that a bit. Yeah. And as you said earlier, it never delivered on any of its promises. So was that entirely something that Yogi Bhajan made up, or was there any evidence that there were particular outcomes that would come out of doing, practice a certain way for a period of time?
I'm not a Sanskritist, so I'm not an authoritative voice in this, but I think when you go back to earlier yogic texts, they're going to make kinds of promises. The practitioner of this will find this, kind of more poetic promises, the person who does this shall have immortality. They'll have, this and this life and then the next. But you're right. That is, it's not just benefits. It's not just, you're going to be better if you do this, healthy lifestyle. You're on your way. Yogi Bhajan and his system, they offer very, very specific promises and results. Yeah. Do this for 40 days. And this set is for the liver. This set is for prosperity. This set is to give you intuition. This is to manifest miracles. 11 minutes, 40 days, 31 minutes, 90 days.
Right.
And I mean, to be really blunt, it's not to say that there aren't people who over the long run they're in good health or they have happy lives, but that kind of promising doesn't really hold up. I mean,
Right.
to be really blunt, and I don't mean to be like nasty and dismissive.
No, be blunt.
If,
I
if,
like that about you.
no, if it is a system that gives what it promises, why aren't Los Angeles, Espanola, and these centers, why aren't they filled with, where are the saints?
Right.
Where are the blissed out people? Where are the people who are happy? And that's not to be dismissive of people or these communities. I went to college and I grew up near Millis, and I have fond memories of really wonderful people there, really wonderful, kind, caring people. But yeah, I mean, the promises don't pan out. I think the most important thing is, like, you have like these above board promises, and then you have like the message that's underneath. And I mean, like, what's the message underneath of like all of these kriyas and meditations? It's, one, it's that, like, you can twist the arm of the universe. The universe is like a slot machine. Do this and this will come out. You can make this happen. Just your own will and desire, you can like make these things happen. But there's also something deeply unsettling. I mean, when I step back and I look at it, there's if you look at the system in one sense, there's always something wrong with you. There's always something that you can fix. And to be a good person requires an incredible amount of constant maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that. You can do the 3HO system. You can follow Yogi Bhajan's teachings, and there's lip service to it, but there's, there doesn't have to be like devotion and humility and service. It's like a lot of it is so mechanical. That's what one of Baba Virsa Singh's direct students, a woman named Mary Pat Fisher, said when she heard a student of Yogi Bhajan reciting Nam, Ek Onkar Sat Nam Siddhi Vaheguru. It was abrasive. It was mechanical.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't devotional. It wasn't sweet. It was like breath and numbers and like belting it out and sound current.
Yeah. It was marketing. I mean, he knew what to. If he made these promises, these kriyas would achieve these effects that Americans would buy into it. Is that, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't take away, I think, from the very basic effect. Like, just exercise, use some meditation, like, you're going to feel better.
Right.
That's like with any system.
Exactly.
If you go into a kickboxing gym, you're going to feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, thank you. And thank you so much for your work. It's been so enlightening and just so great. So
thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Laurie. Kate.
Hi. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Hi, Thorin.
Hi. I'm calling from Iceland.
Aha.
My question is, I finished the level 1 teacher training last year.
Yes.
And I have been teaching Kundalini yoga. But my question is really, is there any way forward to keep doing this Kundalini yoga and provide the teaching for the students? What is your opinion to it?
I mean, I can offer some comments. I mean, I think this too. This is it's a very deeply, it's a hard and in many ways it's a very sad and tragic question to answer. I don't know. I mean, I can speculate, and I think that to try and find some kind of hope, some kind of way forward. Many of the people that I interviewed, many of the ex-members that I interviewed, they said that when they joined 3HO in the late 60s and the early 1970s, they wanted a community, they wanted a family, and they wanted to live a spiritual life. They wanted to live spiritual values. And I don't think it's ridiculous to say that even in the middle of everything that's going on, those things are still available, however painful and hard it is. You know, community doesn't end because of that. I mean, if you look at the example of a family, how many families have had horrible revelations come to light, but they can still exist as a family. I mean, this, you know, it sounds very naive, but I wonder, you know, if the handling of all of these revelations and scandals, if it's not an opportunity to really embody spiritual values that were talked about for so long. You know, if you talk about humility, if you talk about compassion, if you talk about, you know, all these Yogi Bhajanisms of, you know, the other person is you, then wouldn't this seem to be a really significant time to do those things? For the people who had so much invested in the yoga, I mean, in some ways, it's difficult. I mean, you know, I've said before, with the things that have come out about Yogi Bhajan and will come out, I think it's just a toxic, he's just a toxic persona. It's just in such a way that it would be, it'd be very difficult to, number one, I think it would be absolutely impossible to rehabilitate his image. When you look at other public figures who've had scandal, similar to that, no one is able to rehabilitate them. No one says, you know, Harvey Weinstein, sexual predator, he produced great movies, especially when it's so tied into the teacher and the yoga. I mean, it's as taught by Yogi Bhajan. You're tuning in to the golden chain of which Yogi Bhajan is a part. You're meditating on his image. I don't know. I mean, it's very difficult. I also think that, you know, there has not been any kind of healthy, open experimentation with the system of Kundalini yoga. I don't know what's salvageable. I don't know if Kundalini yoga can be stripped down to parts and made into something else. I don't know. It's
very hard.
It's hard to speculate on that. And I mean, again, I feel for people who suddenly realize that what they were doing is very different than what they thought. I feel sorry for the naive teacher trainers who thought they were doing one thing, and suddenly, for many of them, you know, these things have been out for decades online and in conversation with ex-members, but for people, I think some people genuinely, like, this came as a shock. They were just caught off guard by all this. I don't know. I mean, I think one of the healthiest things is to look at the examples of other communities and other groups. It's a sad commentary that, like, this is not unique. This kind of abuse of power and abuse of I mean, there's so much abuse in so many different ways. The abuse of children, the obvious abuse of women, the abuse of men, of the abuse of people's labor. And in some ways, you know, one of the things that came out recently was how much Yogi Bhajan advocated for domestic violence in his lectures and his private counseling. He told people, you know, if you have problems with your wife, hit her, beat her up.
Right.
There's evidence of this. And in some ways, like, obviously those women are the victims, but in another way, like, those men are also victims too. Like, how awful to have someone that you trust convince you and lead you and guide you into such behavior. What a complete failure of responsibility. Like, what an utter disgrace. Like, that's what you're doing to people. I mean, it's a lot. But I think that, you know, a lot of communities and a lot of spiritual communities have gone through this. And, you know, I think this is just me being prescriptive. You know, maybe it's the time to look at all these other groups and see what worked and what didn't work, what can be done. Because some groups are still able to exist through that. Maybe it's not in the same form, but I don't know, maybe it's still possible. I don't know. And it's a shame, because I think at that basic level, so many of the people who practiced yoga and taught yoga, they just wanted to be healthier. They believed in the promise of the organization's name itself. They wanted to be healthy, they wanted to be happy, and they wanted to be holy.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing now is just the inverse of all of those things.
And I have spoke to two teachers who teach us last year, and they, both of them said, I know this kind of yoga works. It works for me. I have taught it for so many years, and I helped so many people. And I just ask myself, how can anyone teach this yoga from now? Because some of those are a lie, some of that are untrue, and we don't know where it's come from.
Yeah.
And so, and the abuse and all of that it's so much, I don't know how to say it, but it's so much. And I have seen classes online here in Iceland. The people are offering Kundalini yoga classes, and my response is, what? Why?
Yeah.
I feel it so much. So I don't know how to say it. Just so I feel so much with the people who Yogi Bhajan did this abuse with. I feel so much with them, like Pamela, and yes, it's so much. I don't know how they can do this yoga.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of the things that people say but it still works. You know, we can separate the teacher from the teachings. You know, we shouldn't dismiss everything because of this. You know, there's something very dismissive of victims in that. And especially to do it so early, without even knowing the full extent of it. There's something very kind of callous and dismissive about that. Matthew Remski, an author and a researcher, he refers to it as "I got mineism." I got mine, so it doesn't matter. I'm good though. I've got mine. Doesn't matter what happened to you. And I mean, you know, if for nothing else, I mean, I think there's you know, the handling of abuse and how it's handled. It's not only it's not only for the benefit of those who are abused and who, you know, they absolutely take they're absolutely the first consideration. You also have to think about the example that you leave. You know, when I talked about the late 1960s of all of these students who joined 3HO, they have all these ideas in their head, from Autobiography of a Yogi, Carlos Castaneda. You know, you think in terms of violence against women and abuse, how many stories have we all heard that try to make it normal and try to make it okay? He did this, but he was an amazing musician. That is, you know, maybe that's the big lesson, of to set an example, not only out of respect for victims, but to actually leave a legacy, leave a legacy that says, you know, people matter, their well-being actually matters, and not in a way that I give you my well-being by being this enlightened teacher from a podium, from a platform, but your well-being matters because I'm able to listen, and I'm able to, in all humility, ask, what do I need to do? What can be done?
Yes, thank you very much.
You're
for
welcome.
this. It is really, really good to have this from you, all this research and everything. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you, Thorin. Thank you.
still trickling in at this moment, so I'm just going to take a minute to explain the format of this call to make sure everybody knows how to use the technology, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So this is a Zoom webinar. It might be a little different from the Zoom meetings you've attended in the past. We have a Q&A box. So if you click the Q&A box, you can type your questions in there. That is how we will be taking questions for this call. We are going to do our best to get to as many questions as we can today, and I hope that we can. We are going to start this call with a presentation that will give a little more information about what's currently going on with the organization. So you might want to hold your questions until after that presentation in case it answers some questions for you. So once again, you can use the Q&A box to chat with us, and I will turn it over to Pritpal Kaur to begin the session.
Welcome everyone. In case I haven't met you personally, I'm Pritpal Kaur, Executive Director of 3HO, and I want to welcome you all today. I'd like us to begin by just sitting tall through our spine and anchor your feet if you're sitting on the ground, your sit bones, or your feet if you're sitting in a chair firmly. And let's bring our palms together to just center ourselves before we begin. Take a breath in as you gently close your eyes down, and exhale. And then as we take a breath in, again focus at your third eye. Center yourself to deeply listen today. Experience what you're hearing, both within and without. And then relax your breath. And then we'll tune in with the Mangala Charan mantra, Ad Gire Name, 3 times out loud. So if you'll take a breath in, inhale deeply. Ad Gire Name, Jugat Gire Name, Sat Gire Name, Sri Guru Deve Name, Ad Gire Name, Jugat Gire Name, Sat Gire Name, Sri Guru Deve Name, Ad Gire Name, Jugat Gire Name, Sat Gire Name, Sri Guru Deve Name. Inhale deeply. And exhale. So before we begin today, we just want to be clear that today is about hearing your voice, but through questions, and we'll talk about that more so you can understand the format. But it's also about listening, and some of what you hear today might be somewhat triggering for you or might feel uncomfortable, but please just listen, breathe deeply, and again, we'll have plenty of time for questions after the presentation. So now I'd like to just ask Satnam Singh or Hari Rai, are you needing to share anything else before we begin with Satnam Singh?
I'm just going to do one more reminder since we've had some new attendees since we started. To let everyone know this is a webinar format. You'll only be able to see the panelists who are answering questions. We will be taking questions through the Q&A box. So if you are on a phone, you'll just be listening today, or you might want to get on a computer to join the webinar that way if you would like to type a question into the box. So again, you can find the Q&A box down at the bottom. I recommend you hold your questions until the end of the presentation, as it might answer some questions for you. But then we'll go ahead and open it up. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Hari Rai and Pritpal Kaur. Good evening, everyone. Satnam. My name is Satnam Singh. I'm an attorney in the Office of Dharmic Counsel, which is an organization within the Siri Singh Sub Corporation. We're going to walk through a set of slides. With me to go through the slides, it's Amrit Kaur, Chief Dharmic Counsel. He's also an attorney in the Office of Dharmic Counsel. and then we're happy to take questions at the end of the slides. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get started. So, why are we here? In January 2020, a former secretary of Yogi Bhajan self-published a book detailing her experiences with Yogi Bhajan, and those experiences included an alleged sexual relationship. And shortly after the publication of the book, a number of serious allegations by other women were reported on social media and otherwise, and as a result, a great concern was created within the community. Now, out of respect for the values of our community and a commitment to the mission and integrity of our collective organizations, it was necessary for these allegations to be addressed. The Serious Things Happen Corporation, if you don't know, is the organization that sits at the top of our organizational structure. And so it fell upon Serious Things Happen Corporation to address the allegations in a responsible way. And the way that the Serious Things Happen Corporation did that was to form the Collaborative Response Team, which is a team of 6 representatives drawn from our nonprofit and for-profit organizations within our organizational chart. And it was charged specifically to provide a time-sensitive response to the escalating crisis. On the right side of your screen, there's a letter that basically describes the formation of the Collaborative Response Team, or CRT. Now, the CRT reports weekly to the SSSC and obtains its input to inform its actions. One of the first things that the CRT did was to recommend that the SSSC hire a firm to conduct an independent investigation into the allegations. To keep our communities and our constituents informed in as transparent a way possible, the CRT launched a website to act as a central point of communication. If you haven't already seen it, it's at www.sss.ssscresponseteam.org. I'm going to talk for a minute about the process that the CRT has used to respond to the allegations. Firstly, and if you visit the website, you'll see all of the statements that the CRT has issued to date during its work. And a lot of the information that you're going to hear today is presented on the website in one form or another. One of the first things that the CRT did was to acknowledge the allegations. And that includes acknowledging the harm that's reported and not retaliate against the people reporting harm. It also includes not issuing any denials to the allegations or any defensive or making any defensive statements before an investigation is concluded. Secondly, investigate the allegations. And as I mentioned, the CRT, one of the first things the CRT did was to basically begin the process of starting an independent investigation. And so, that includes providing a professional and neutral third party to do the work of the investigation, to be transparent during the process of the investigation. And again, if you visit the website, you'll find information in more detail than what's being presented here about the process. Protect confidentiality and the identity of witnesses who participate in the investigation, and make the outcome of the investigation public. The third piece of CRT's work has been to move quickly, to act promptly. And so it was formed as a team that was capable of moving quickly and being very responsive to changing circumstances. It's communicated often with all stakeholders And another thing that the CRT has done, and that the SSSC has done, is to make immediate counseling available to those who have reported harm. Now that's not an acknowledgement that the allegations are true, but simply that people may have been harmed, and the responsible and compassionate thing to do is to provide care immediately. And so that's what was done. I'm going to talk a little bit about the investigator that was chosen and the process the CRT used to identify an investigator. So the qualities that the CRT identified that would be important in an investigator include experience with dealing with difficult issues of sexual misconduct, appropriate training in interviewing and evaluating both supporting and refuting evidence, the ability to establish trust with witnesses, particularly in this sensitive area that the investigator is dealing with, and also experience dealing with the unique issues that a spiritual-based setting can present. Just on the left side of the screen, there's this point. So, independent investigation by a third party is necessary to provide an unbiased forum for seeking the truth. We deliberately went outside of the organization to find an independent party to do this work, so that there would be no hint of bias in the work of the investigator. It's important to keep in mind also the context of this investigation. So it's not a legal proceeding, or whether criminal or civil. So there's no ability to compel witnesses or evidence, and so CRT determined that a retired criminal investigator or some other type of investigator who's chiefly focused on finding facts for purposes of an ongoing litigation matter, would not be on point. So human resources investigators have experience dealing with harassment, sexual harassment in a workplace setting, but not with sexual misconduct in the spiritual community. And so HR investigators were also considered to be not directly appropriate for this type of work. Judges and lawyers are often distrusted and feared, which can discourage witnesses, and particularly when you're dealing with sensitive issues of sexual misconduct, that factor can be even more severe. And the CRT determined that creating a space where witnesses would be able to come forward comfortably was important. Judges and lawyers, therefore, were also ruled out as not being ideal. And it's in the last point on this slide, in interviewing potential investigators, it was clear that no one investigator had done like several investigations of this kind. Like it's a uncommon enough situation that there aren't investigators that have just done a ton of these specific types of investigations involving allegations of misconduct within a spiritual community. So the CRT decided that an olive branch met the critical requirements, met all the criteria we were looking for. An olive branch is a project of the Zen Center of Pittsburgh, which is a nonprofit. And Olive Branch consultants have advised and counseled 25 organizations that have experienced ethical issues. And they have performed 5 projects for Buddhist organizations, 2 were independent investigations, and 3, such as what they're doing for us now, and 3 were listening posts where they provided a place for people who wanted to report on their experiences to simply report their experiences without critical inquiry by an olive branch. And so an olive branch collected testimony and published a report of the testimony. And so that's something different from what they're doing in this case, where they are acting as investigators. An olive branch also possesses the critical listening skills needed to respond sensitively and to ask probing questions around credibility and motive issues. And if you visit the website, you'll find more information regarding an olive branch. Specifically, if you visit the SSSEResponseteam.org website, we talk about the qualifications of an olive branch to do this work. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amrit Kaur.
And so, in the investigation, it's important that we had the full participation of everybody who had any type of relevant information, so that the result would be a balanced and fair investigation. So efforts have been made throughout the investigative process to ensure that Yogi Bhajan's voice is heard through his students and family, and the credibility and motive of all witnesses is being assessed by AOB. So the reporters of harm are, credibility and motive is being investigated and assessed. And the investigation is impartial, as Satnam Singh mentioned. The SSSC and CRT, none of our orgs are involved in it. And the olive branch will not be drawing any conclusions about the various allegations until they've completed the investigation. And so, again, this addresses to preserve the independence of the investigation from our organizations. It isn't, any part of our organization is not involved in the investigation, because that would keep the investigation from being viewed as independent or unbiased. So neither this, the CRT, the SSSC, or any of our orgs are actually conducting the investigation. Only an olive branch is receiving information. So witnesses have been asked to report their evidence directly and confidentially to an olive branch. The CRT is not collecting that information. The SSSC is not. We're not running a parallel investigation in terms of collecting information. Everybody who's come forward was directed to report directly to an olive branch. And we have not, as I said, been seeking or hearing evidence. That's the role of the olive branch, not any part of our organizations. It's anticipated that the final report from the olive branch will be given to the Sri Singh Corp and the CRT next month, but it may take longer due to the large volume of contacts an olive branch has received. Once the report has been completed and delivered to our organizations, it will then be released publicly. The olive branch, in its investigation as independent fact finders, will make findings of fact and conclusions for each allegation that was brought to them about whether it is more likely than not that the alleged conduct occurred. So Satnam Singh mentioned before, like, it isn't a civil or criminal, it's not a legal action, and this is more likely than not would be a civil type standard rather than a criminal standard of beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's just more likely than not that from all the information they gathered from the reporter of the harm and from the various other witnesses that were contacted in relation to each allegation, they'll set forth the facts that they considered, and then that they received and considered, and the conclusions they reached about whether each particular allegation is more likely than not that the alleged conduct occurred. That will be the end of the investigation, and our organizations will engage the entire community in a collaborative effort to move forward together. And so moving forward will require us responding appropriately after the investigation as an organization. We envision opportunities for our organizations to evolve as we move forward together. We'll be listening to the voices of our global community and our next generation. And we are embarking on a listening tour to open a space for deep listening.
Okay, I'll go ahead and jump in here real quick and talk a little bit about what 3HO is planning for the listening tour. Again, today is really just an opportunity for us to answer some questions. We won't get a big opportunity to hear individually from people, but we very much want to create that space for people to be able to share personally, to be able to share your thoughts with our organization, and to go through whatever kind of a group process together. So we will be following up with everyone who has registered for this call probably next week to give you more details about how you can register for one of these calls if you're interested in participating in a more personal process. These will be small groups. They will be facilitated, and you'll really be able to share in a more intimate space. So again, we will be following up next week with more information. And at our e-solstice, which is coming up this weekend, the June 19th, 20th, and 21st, on June 20th, we have a session called the Moving Forward session. If you are registered for our e-solstice, you can also attend that session to hear more about the listening tour, what it will involve, and how you can get signed up and get involved.
Thank you, Eddie Ride. So this last slide, getting in touch, feel free to jot down our information and feel free to reach out with questions regarding this presentation, the work of the CRT, the listening tour, or the work focused on next generation issues. And that concludes the presentation. We're happy to take questions at this point.
So while you're putting your questions in the chat, in the Q&A, I'd just like to share that, please understand that this opportunity we're having tonight together is an opportunity for questions and answers around the presentation you saw and concerning the allegations. We also, as Hari Rai said and Satnam Singh said, the listening tour then will be the next step. It'll be an opportunity for us to, as a community, to really talk about our way forward in a way that comes from your voices, from your wisdom, and from your sharing, so that we can really create that way forward to not just serve our now, but serve the future of this remarkable lifestyle and teachings being able to serve for many years to come, to uplift humanity, which it has been doing for so long.
So, going to the Q&A, so there's a question about participation in the survey. Okay, so I think that's been addressed. So we have a question, what do you mean by next generation issues? So part of what's been happening since the book by Pamela Dyson was published in January, it is a conversation among next generation members of this organization, of this community. So people who have grown up in 3HO and this community. And, you know, that conversation has touched on a variety of experiences growing up in 3HO. And part of the work that's happening now is to listen to those voices of the next generation and to determine ways that the next generation can be contributed and their needs looked at. Thank you for that question. And we have another question.
Satnam Singh, we missed part of your last response, I think. You cut out a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, we're getting a little bit of mic interference, so I'm not sure if there's noise from something.
Yeah. So what I was saying is that part of what's happening as a result of the education club is a conversation among. Sorry, I'm ready. Yeah, 1 second.
I actually think it's Atma, can you mute yourself?
Great. So I'll just recap quickly. There's been a conversation going on among the next generation and between the first generation and the second generation, next generation of this 3HO community. And, you know, that conversation has touched on a lot of things, but part of what it's touched on is some difficult experiences that people have had growing up within this community. And so part of the work that's being done right now within this organization and within this community is to listen to the voices of the next generation and to hear their experiences, to listen to their experiences, and to determine ways, find out ways of supporting the next generation. And that's meant to be a collaborative process, a sharing process where the next generation can be, you know, actively involved in communicating and expressing their needs, and and where the first generation can play a role, you know, listening and supporting with the intention that the expressed needs of the next generation are addressed as part of this overall process of you know, healing and moving forward and listening within our organizations. So the next question, which I think Amarkar will answer, what have the outcomes been for the previous investigations by an olive branch? Did they find wrongdoing in any of their previous investigations? How many people are working on this project?
Satnam, the two investigations that the olive branch did were not made public at the request of those clients. And so we can't answer that question in terms of what the outcomes were, because they were kept confidential by the entity that requested the investigation. And they have 3 people working on the project. And so we're going to go on to the next question. This presentation will happen, the question, will the presentation happen on each call? And the answer is yes. So if you didn't hear it all today, or you want to come on again to hear it again, it will be doing the presentation on each call.
The next question, how is AOB corroborating the circumstances around each accusation? So the investigators at an olive branch who are working on this are trained investigators. and they've also been given a lot of background information about our organization, about our community, and that includes historical information that could implicate motives or issues or motive or credibility issues among other witnesses. And so they have a broad amount of information to draw from, and with that information, they can ask probing questions to determine the veracity or the credibility of each allegation. And more than that, I mean, they can cross-reference information that they hear from one witness with information heard from another witness, and you sort of using standard indicators of credibility determine whether an allegation could be is more likely than not to be true. Like for example, if there's a lot of consistency among information provided by witnesses, whether that's sort of in support of the allegations or that tends to refute or undermine the allegations, then that would be something that an olive branch would certainly take into consideration. So I hope that helps to answer that question. So the next question goes to transparency. Is how transparent will 3HO be with everything? Will the report be redacted in any way, or will it be just as AOB provides? And so the report will not be redacted in any way. The one piece to mention, sort of in connection with the report, I mean, it will certainly be confidential, and so they will take pains to avoid mentioning details to the extent that those details might lead to identifying information. But to this specific question, no, it will not be redacted. So there's another question that just popped up. Who will be representing Yogi Bhajan? So an olive branch has a lot of information about people who have been involved in a close way, or who had been involved in a close way with Yogi Bhajan, in his inner circle, so to speak. And so they have names of witnesses to provide relevant information. Beyond that, anyone who has had information relevant to the allegations to support Yogi Bhajan or to refute the allegations has been free to contact an olive branch and to participate in the investigation. And many people have done so. And so a lot of supporters of Yogi Bhajan have shared their information with an olive branch. And so those are his advocates. There's no representative in this type of context for Yogi Bhajan. That's just not something that exists. So no one is appointed to represent him specifically. But again, many people have shared their information in support of Yogi Bhajan, and an olive branch will consider all of that information in making its findings and conclusions.
Well, this looks like it's a question. Will Yogi Bhajan for 3HO, but will Yogi Bhajan's picture be removed from the summer solstice event? Is it still okay to use it? Does 3HO have an official position on this? So I would just say at this point, the investigation is not complete and no report has been issued. And so this question kind of assumes a conclusion has already been reached, which it hasn't. So I don't know, Pritpal Kaur, you want to comment on what you're planning to do?
Yes, there is no official position on that. It really is an individual, a center, your choice. And it's, we will be doing Kriyas and tuning in and featuring all of Yogi Bhajan's teachings in the way we always have. We will be featuring his teachings at the event.
So the Q&A queue is currently clear. So I think we can. I was going to say, I think we can wait to see if any more questions.
Okay, we got another one, Pritpal Kaur, this would be for 3HO, because it says, I missed the answer to whether Yogi Bhajan's picture would be posted during the e-solstice.
So the format of the e-solstice is really quite different in that we won't be having a formal stage set up. It will be, just to give you an idea of what the event will be like, we will have every day 2 pre-recorded classes with teachers. So we won't have a backdrop with Yogi Bhajan's picture. People will be tuning in with Om Namo. They will be, most of the classes that will happen that way. We do have some breakout groups, which are more just discussion groups, and that the different facilitators of those groups might not exactly tune in with Om Namo because they might not be doing a Kriya or a meditation during those breakout groups. But, the background is up to the teacher and who will be presenting, because it's all over Zoom. We will have a meditation each day. We will have sadhana each morning. We will have an all camp or an all event meditation in the mornings. We'll have music in the evenings, and we will also have some lunch times with the luminaries, which are our real heroes of the journey of Kundalini Yoga and 3HO at this time. They're people really serving the world with seva. So that's going to be a very exciting moment. So we are not having a background as usual with Yogi Bhajan's picture on it. There has been no determination of how 3HO will move forward in terms of, whether we have Yogi Bhajan's picture at future solstices. We are really looking, as all of us are, from a very neutral space to this investigation. When the investigation is released, then there will be dialogue, and these are actually some of the questions that we will dialogue about in our moving forward piece of having these dialogues together, because we want to hear from you as a community on your thoughts and feelings. Also, someone asked about why didn't we tune in with Om Namo tonight. We did tune in with a part of a tune-in that we use traditionally in Kundalini Yoga classes, which is the Adgare Name, which is just a very sweet tune-in that we often use at 3HO for any meetings we're having, just to tune our space together and our resonance together. And I do want to say there is something in the chat that I would love to respond to, and it's about Yogi Bhajan, his teachings, and the amazing gift he has brought to the world in these teachings and this technology. And there is no intention of in any way changing that or not continuing to offer that technology and those teachings to the world. We're in this world right now the world needs this powerful technology for so many reasons, which I really don't have to even stay here because I know it's what's really keeping all of us in our space of being able to ride through these times with ease and with clarity.
So there's a question in the queue about how might this impact white tantric yoga, and so there, without the report being issued, there's really no way to say, and so this is just not something we can speculate about at this time. And there's another question. So where is guidance being offered for teachers to discuss these issues with our students? This is a difficult topic. The timelines of investigation is long. Something needs to be said. So what is the official guidance on delivering a message of compassion? So it's a great question. I think it's a question that Kara or I would likely have some input on, but Paul Kaur, is that something that you would like to weigh in on? How is there any guidance for teachers on how to communicate about this process?
Yeah, so I think what's very important here is to be transparent with people, to be open, to be compassionate. We are in a place, as Satnam Singh and Amrit Kaur have very clearly outlined, we're in a place of listening. We're in a place of acknowledging and doing this in a way that is, we feel very compassionate to all, compassionate to those who are reporting harm and those who also are reporting their love for Yogi Bhajan, and not that one is exclusive of the other. So this is an important, a very important question. And as a teacher trainer, what I have always done, what I have continued to do with students that I work with, is when they ask, be open and transparent, and then have them go inside and really deeply look at the experience of this technology for them, and to look at, again, how the teachings have really affected their life, and then to just look at that in a very open way, and not to if someone feels like at this time for themselves that they need to make some change in how they relate to Yogi Bhajan, that is their personal choice. But 3HO does not have any change, again, in our honoring and respecting the brilliance of this teacher and of what he brought. Someone also asked, I think, about white tantric yoga. I don't know if Amrit or Satnam Singh, you want to respond?
So, yeah, I responded earlier, and really, the response is that it's really too soon to tell what, if anything, would happen with white tantric yoga. And so that's I think that's a question that will have to be considered once the report comes out. And so I don't think it would be appropriate to speculate about that at this point. Amrit Kaur, I don't know if you have ideas that you'd like to share on that.
No, I think that's correct, and maybe part of the listening tour process will give input and thoughts on that from the community as you go. You have the opportunity to weigh in those groups if there's also that kind of feedback you want to get, whether you are comfortable with it or not. I'm sure that would be welcome input. But yes, it's too soon to know because we don't know what the outcome of the investigation is going to be. So all of these kind of questions will have to be dealt with at a later time after the reports come out. And then this also leads into the next question, or actually it's a statement and then a question. It is important that the idea to remove Yogi Bhajan's image does not become a way to distort our history. Are there any other ideas for full disclosure moving forward? And how can we share ideas for healing more productively? And so for those, it is, participating in the listening tour. The process is 3HO is going to have the other nonprofits. KRI has been having processes with the trainers. That wherever you are, wherever you're connected to the community, if you plug into the forums and the opportunity to be able to share your thoughts and feelings, that will be really important for all of us as we move forward. And so I'd encourage you to participate in the listening tour and whatever other forums come your way that attract your interest. And then the last question we have in the queue at the moment is there a way to submit to AOB anonymously? And the AOB input process has closed now. They are working on preparing their report, so they're not at this point taking new emails about information that people may want to share. But the process was not anonymous. That people were, if somebody made a report of harm, they couldn't do it anonymously. They had to be identify themselves so that AOB was able to, as Satnam Singh said, go through the process of investigating their motives and testing credibility. That you can't do that with an anonymous complaint. So it was necessary that people identified themselves. So I hope that answers that question. And that's all the questions we have in the queue. So. So the next question, another one popped in, can you speak on the investment we have made for level 1s, level 2s, and so forth, and the manual and certifications that have its name? Again, there is, that really will be, once the investigation has been publicized, released by an olive branch, those will really be KRI directed questions. And if you're still teaching, you could still use, you receive the certifications, and they are valid regardless of the outcomes. So the next question, there's a rumor that someone is going to make a movie about all of this. Is there any truth to this? I don't know, Satnam Singh, I've heard a couple of rumors about it, but I haven't heard people actually stepping forward. Maybe you've heard something. So.
Yeah, I have the same amount of information. I've heard a rumor of some documentary that someone might be working on, but that's about all I know.
So that's the end of the queue again. We still have 10 minutes scheduled, but if there's no more questions, we can go ahead and let Hari Rai wrap up.
Okay, well, I just want to mention one more time, there were some questions tonight about the process for how do you share your thoughts about the organization moving forward, how can we really engage in that listening. So that's exactly the purpose of the listening tour that's coming up, is to allow us an opportunity to really hear from you in more depth about your thoughts and feelings and stories and all of that. So once again, we will be following up next week with more information about how to sign up for a listening tour session. And We will also be presenting about that at the E-Summit, the E-Solstice on Saturday afternoon. There is a session called Moving Forward, and we'll also use that time to talk a little bit more about the listening tour and how you can join the list to make sure you are notified about how to participate. So I think that's it for logistics. Thank you all very much for joining us today.
And I do want to encourage all of you, if you know anyone that would like to join, we have, I think, 2 more calls this week. Is that correct, Patty Ryan? Or we have one this week?
Yes, we have 1 more call on Wednesday, and then we have 2 more calls next week. If you are joining this call, you probably got an email with a link. You can go back to that link anytime to see the full schedule of upcoming calls. You're welcome to come on to as many of these questions and answers as you would like. If you have new questions pop up, feel free to come back. We will be doing the presentation in every call, so if you know someone who might be interested in seeing it and wasn't able to make it on this call, you're also welcome to direct them to another call.
And I really want to, again, thank you all for joining us. It is, Duke Navarne is asking, and there were over, I think, around 45 people on the call, correct? Patty Ryan, it's at one point. But I want to just encourage you all to please join the Moving Forward and Listening Tour calls. We want your voice. Your voice is what shapes the future. And so we want to have your voices included, and this means a lot to the future of 3HO, not just 3HO, but all of our organizations, because you are 3HO. We are just here at the helm, sitting here, doing some day-to-day work, but you really are our community, and your voice is very, 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 each of your voices are very important individually, for us to hear you individually and to affect the collective as we move forward. So thank you all very, very much. I know it's an hour out of, even though we're all at home, it's still busy days. So thank you for being here. I also really want to thank Hadi Rai, Amrit Kaur, and Satnam Singh, and Joe, you for joining, and Kaur, but especially Amrit Kaur and Satnam Singh for your time and all your information.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Well, thank you. Our pleasure.